About 65 years ago, the Soviet Union launched the first artificial satellite into orbit. The event served as a starting pistol what would come to be known as the space race, a competition between the USSR and the United States for spaceflight supremacy. In the decades that followed, the first human reached space, a man walked on the moon, and first space stations were built, in which NASA spent $28 billion or about 288 billion in today's date, from 1960 to 1973, developing the rockets, spacecraft and ground system needed for the Apollo program. However, today NASA spends about $20 billion annually or about 0.5% of total GDP. In recent years, a new space race has taken shape. Rather than powerful nations guided by presidents and premiers, the competitors in the race are tech startups and private businesses spearheaded by billionaire entrepreneurs. Now, about 52 years after first Apollo moon landing, NASA is planning to return to lunar surface in 2024 after 5 decades of technological progress. Now, NASA will not be starting from scratch, and obviously the cost will be lower than the price tag of Apollo, but it will not be cheap. Recently, NASA also gave contract to SpaceX of more than $330 million for mission that will launch 2 key pieces of Gateway, a space station that NASA plans to put into orbiting around the moon as part of space agency Artemis program. NASA said that SpaceX will launch the foundation element of the Gateway, including a cylindrical module that will serve as astronaut living quarter and large box shaped, which will provide power and communication service to the space station from one of its Falcon Heavy rockets no earlier than May 2024. Is NASA really giving up on space race, or is NASA trying to cut off the burden of making rockets? What do you think? Is space travel going to be cheap and easy like never before? To know the answer to this question, we have to look back at the history of aviation. Back in early 1940, the aviation industry rose up almost overnight cause of World War, as the government demanded aircraft for war use. But after the end of the war, the contract started to be cancelled and there was risk that the aviation industry would completely collapse. There was not any profitable market in sight. One place where aircraft were needed was postal delivery. These mail-carrying flights became regular and scheduled, and bright enterprising entrepreneurs came up with the idea of selling tickets for passengers to ride on those aircraft along with the mail. And following the idea, airplanes became larger, and as the industry became established and efficient, the market grew. People became more trusting and tickets became cheaper, and slowly aviation became normal way of travel. Soon after, aviation companies were making enough profit that they did not really need to carry the mail to stay in business. As we saw the history of aviation industry, the commercial space industry is in similar early stage today. In this period, the government has needs the private sector can fulfill, and through those needs, they can develop the technology in an affordable way. Companies like SpaceX, Virgin Galactic are planning for space tourism, and many people are willing to pay the huge amount of money for this experience. The more these companies do these things, the more they can amortize the cost, the less they need to charge customers. The larger the potential market of customer. I hope that they will reach a state where they can profit without government business. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin and Tesla CEO Elon Musk SpaceX are arguably the 2 companies that are setting the pace. In November 2015, the former completed the first successful vertical landing after sending their New Shepard 100 km or 62 miles into the space. SpaceX landed its own rocket a month later, in which the craft used was twice heavier than of Blue Origin and traveled all the way to the space first. A month after that, In January 2016, Bezos' company became the first entity to relaunch and reland previously used rockets. SpaceX followed in 2017, where the government or NASA were never able to build reusable rockets, but now two private companies within the span of same year have done that. As we can see, the competition is huge, but it is positive in a way that now Americans should not depend upon Russian Soyuz spacecraft to send its astronaut in orbit, as SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon capsule have already made successful flights. Aside from eliminating NASA dependence on Russia to send astronauts into orbit, the SpaceX launch is significantly for another reason: cost. Under a program called Commercial Crew, NASA awarded SpaceX and Boeing contracts worth $3.1 billion and $4.8 billion respectively to develop new spacecraft. That has turned out to be cheapest spaceflight development effort in nearly 60 years. Now the cost per seat for each astronaut is significantly lower than the previous programs and Soyuz. According to NASA audit, the SpaceX Crew Dragon per seat cost an estimated $55 million, while a seat on Boeing's Starliner is approximately $90 million. Therefore, summing up the equations of space exploration, Blue Origin seems to be focusing on space tourism, while SpaceX intends to colonize Mars, while NASA has its own goals. Commercialization of space travel has benefited those private companies, and NASA is easing its operation and cutting costs by contracting out its tasks, in spite of their focus set on different missions. These companies are really head-to-head on innovation for space travel. Let us see what happens next.